Thank you.
Yeah, I've read them. I've already read them. Yeah,
So future reference to if you ever want to go back to the video, you make sure that everything in the minutes are accurate. If you see any changes during the next meeting, I will bring it up if anybody wants to make amendments or changes to it or approve it. Should I for a vote and then a first and a second to the minutes that stands.
Right, is there a motion to approve the minutes as read?
Yes.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
All right. Minutes are approved and seconded, and we'll move on to number 3, introduction of new members.
So firstly, I would like to say, thank you to our leaving members, Toby Ferguson, Brad Hill, and the Brits of serving on the board. We appreciate their time and effort that they devoted to Ptac board. And I'd like to welcome Jose Martinez, Joe Berlin. So if you guys like to go in order, just take some time, introduce yourself, let us know about you and what you do and what you want to bring to the board.
Absolutely. My name is Isaiah Martinez, General Manager of Landscape Workshop. It's a landscape company here. Just got promoted 2 weeks ago, actually, to the general manager role. I've been in Beaufort for 8 years now, and originally I've been landscaping for about 6 of those years. Got out of the Marine Corps in 2020. And what I want to bring to the table is basically my experience with working in the city. I work with the greenery, who works hand in hand with them in a lot of projects. So I know a lot about the different trees and the different things that we're allowed to put in, what works best. So I just want to bring my knowledge of landscaping and how to fit it in to the board as best I can.
Good, welcome.
yeah. Hey, hello, everybody. I'm Joe Mack. Grew up in Beaufort. Have a bicycle business on Boundary Street. I moved here as a little kid. Had a lot of fun growing up here and traveled all around this place and elsewhere. Always loved parks. So anything I can do to help out.
Very good. And
Welcome
welcome
aboard.
to you.
Appreciate you guys flying and
Yeah,
coming out. Look forward to working together.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. Very good. All right, moving on to number 4, which is tree ordinance recommendations.
I'll speak on it, and then if you want to kind of
Please.
talk about what you've been working on. So Ptac has been working extremely hard on coming up with new recommendations for the tree ordinance through the city. So they've been working probably for the last 6 months intensely on it, of going through the old ordinances, marking up the old changes, and trying to come up with some new recommendations that fall more in line of where kind of we want to move as a city, protecting our trees, kind of buffing up our ordinances. So I know Ms. Ferry has been working along, attending some meetings, and she's got some more information on where that process is.
Okay, there's been a number of meetings already, and in your notes there, you can see some recommendations that were made by Ptac. In addition to that, there have been more recommendations as we have continued meeting. And the we is Kurt Fries, who runs the planning department here. And also it includes Michael Murphy, who is the arborist for the city of Beaufort. And also there's some members of the Coastal Conservation League, including Jesse White and Grant McClure. And their assistants have also attended these meetings, and of course myself. And a number of the recommendations that have been made are in this packet, which you don't have. you are most welcome to attend these meetings if you have an interest in doing that. Some of the recommendations that have already been made include the types of trees to be planted, the fines have been increased, which was sorely needed. If we can get a hold of a copy machine, it would be, I think, a good thing to provide to them.
Yeah.
That you guys can take home and take a look at and maybe review it and come up with your recommendations. So, that's,
This is the ones that they had. Brought up,
what page you on.
7.
So those trees, I think there's been a revision of a number of those trees. And we'll take a look. I hope he can get copies of that. I know downstairs in the copy machine. They revised this list. And, to include what would be specimen, what would be landmark trees in terms of the caliber inches. So when he comes back, take a look at those. I think sometimes when you go through the whole ordinance, it can be a little bit confusing. But what Kurt has done is he has revised like sections of it to make it clearer and more concise and readable and usable to developers. They've referred a lot to the ordinance of Port Royal that was revised. And the changes that were made there in terms of implementing them, same kinds of changes here. Maybe not as strict as what they have, because I know that there's been a lot of pushback since they started implementing their new ordinance. I think it's one of the strictest in the state so far.
The state or the county?
State.
Wow. Oh, yeah, I thought it was the county. I didn't know it was the state.
My understanding was the state. It's pretty strict,
That's good.
but there's been, a lot of pushback. So now I think they're revisiting it. This is my understanding, revisiting it and maybe lessening the fines. Because again, they're pretty strict, I think like $500 outrage. That's pretty strict. So in looking at that, first of all, let me back up. Kurt Freeze had been asked by city council to give some previous meeting to start a revision of it. And we at Ptac met and came up with our own revisions. I mean, not knowing that Kurt was doing anything on his side. So the reference to, working on the tree ordinance means that we had met, they had met, and we had differences of opinion. So meeting with this group on a kind of semi-regular basis lately has been helpful to put everything together, so there's no confusion, which at some point can be presented to city council for their vote. So. And I don't know if you know, Michael Murphy, where he's a very, very established arborist in this area. He used to have preservation tree. Oh, you did? Dang. To have preservation,
Thank you.
tree business, and then he was on his own, doing a lot of work for the city of Beaufort now. So he came up with this purpose and intent, just the very beginning of the tree ordinance. Where you can see, the next page is the copy, section 5, and it says purpose and intent. So Michael wrote out, this description here. And you guys, all the changes are in red, so it's very self-explanatory.
So it's trees only or trees and plants? Because I think it says landscaping, so I was.
They talked a little, it's It's mostly trees,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
mostly trees.
So these are his revisions.
In red.
These are the revisions to page 7.
Oh, right, you mean the types of trees?
Yes.
Yes. This is, as you can imagine, this is like very slow moving. It's going through it sentence by sentence by sentence.
Often do they have to, often you guys have to them up on the top of the street.
So depending on areas, we try to raise the canopy one where it's a healthy cut for the tree for it to be able to continue to grow healthy. So usually I'd say eastern sections we're back every 2 years. Just depends on the species, how fast they grow. Sometimes they need them. There's certain places they just have to meet the requirements. So it's over the sidewalk, 10, 12 feet. Page 14, 15. It just depends the area where they're at. What to do, if it's in a park, I'm not trying to raise them too high. Just want people walk under our mowers. So it just depends on the location, species, tree, but generally like every 2 years, we'll be back at the same location and try to raise them up. Unless it's a crepe myrtle.
And it's a big world.
Sometimes every 6 months. It just depends on the species. There's certain types that kind of will grow. Rather than there's others that are inch to inch. Sometimes they just, they meet the requirements.
So this is the first one I've seen. Does this cover city's property, the right of ways and private property?
So the tree ordinance, I believe, going into city treescapes landscape will just cover, I believe, the city's own properties, right of ways, streetscapes, and then I don't know if they have.
Development.
Yeah. I know they have a permitting process for private properties and new developments, but I believe that's, I'm not sure. They mentioned that's in a different section.
The requirements, and that's a little bit gray to me also. The requirements for personal property are going to be different from the requirements for commercial property. My understanding is that most of this is really covering commercial property and future development. there's been a lot of pushback,
That's where the trees are disappearing.
a lot of gripes about, yeah, about the clear cutting going on. And,
Yeah.
you know, and Kurt says a lot of that was approved before he got here. And then we had, you know, that period of COVID and
Puts everything on hold.
there, a lot of things on hold. But a lot of things got approved during that period too. I mean, they did. Just kind of sailed right through. And that's what we're seeing being implemented now, is that they're cutting down security that long ago.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, another thing they talked about at the meeting the other day was, and I think it's down 170, that really large tract that was totally clear cut. I mean, it's gonna blows, I mean, you can't miss it. And they determined based on the current tree ordinance that it was cheaper for them basically to go in and clear cut and cut back and replant, you know, the necessary amount of caliper inches, you know, than to save anything. And that just really drives me. I don't know how you all feel about it, but
I think it's probably a state a lot of those.
a lot of the big oaks I've been to have worked around, but it's always cheaper just to go and clear cut. Anyway, please, you know, take a look at this, and if you guys can, please take some time and even study this and see if you have further recommendations. I would certainly invite that.
Okay.
And please do, please, you know, feel free to put your 2 cents in and let me know what you think.
It's always good to research other surrounding areas of their tree ordinances, especially ones that think on the climate, the growth of Beaver.
I know one that Curtis looked a lot at is the Clemson.
Yeah.
And, you know, as I said, they've been referring a lot to the changes that were made that they helped make. And I'm talking about coastal conservation, and Michael Murphy was involved in that over in Port Royal. And I know that they've looked at Hilton Head too, and probably Savannah too. So they're looking at other tree ordinances to see how they, you know, how that works with their landscape rules. So, okay, any questions?
I'll look into it for sure.
Oh, please do. That would be great. And if you want to attend the next meeting, you're most welcome to. I have to let you know when it is.
Yeah, please let me know when it is. If I can, I will.
Okay.
I think they should post on the city website, I believe most of their.
Okay.
Okay, park assessment reports. Hurricane Thomas Park and Wilson Park.
Okay, so for our new members, we kind of brought back something that Ptac has done in the past, which is an assessment of our current parks right away. So of our points of views. So we chose Calvin Thomas and Wilson Park. They're on the same street on Reebout Road. Calvin Thomas is across from the old bowling alley, and then Wilson Park is right past the light on Armitage Road on the left-hand side. The point of these assessments is to kind of see where they're standing today, seeing if there's any improvements or any amenity changes that we want to make. Just kind of looking at the space there as it is and seeing if we can come up with any recommendations to make it better, more viable, or, you know, in the past, we've also decommissioned parks. That's it.
So these were bullet points that we came up with a number of years ago.
Still have from our last meeting
Right.
with the Wilson Park. You know, to give them an idea of kind of.
Oh, okay. And, you know, and are there any other bullet points that we need to add to this? These are just, you know, a list of 5, for instance. Are there safety hazards? That's not included. Are there new features that could be added that would make it more attractive to, you know, for use?
Yeah.
We, you know, I went and looked at them, but we could just table this until next meeting and give you guys a
give you a
chance to
chance to
look at.
go and look at. I think
Yeah,
that's what we were, when me and Nate talked about it, we figured since last meeting, was pushed back, and then we're getting the amendments for this one. We thought that it would be only right to kind of give them an opportunity to go out, but next meeting, you have everybody's input.
okay.
Yeah, I have like questions or need.
I did visit these parks and actually visited Calvin Thomas when I was a kid, maybe once, but I thought we grew up like 8, 10 houses from there, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure that there is of course, I don't think there was back then, that there's a trail to Spanish Point from Calvin Thomas. Yeah, you'd have to like go on somebody's property.
You'd have to go on somebody's property.
Cause that's what we did as kids. We went all over that place, but,
Oh, to Spanish Point. I was thinking about the
You could
Spanish
see,
Point
like,
Trail.
in one of the, on the left-hand side of the park, you can see there was an old, like either walking trail or riding trail that splits through, just because the growth there and all the trees were kind of removed from it.
Mhm.
But since then, since all the properties kind of sold off, because I know the two sides going down is being preserved by Beaufort County. So that's all county property. So we don't touch that, we just touch our little lot there. But I know that originally there was, because on the backside, there's one going to where I think is the medical rehabilitation center, I believe, that they just built. And then the other one leads sort of the other way. So there may have been an old path that led through there.
Okay.
I was just curious, cause I grew up close to there.
Does that suit you guys, just to table that and, go and take a look at the parks and we'll go through those next meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
If anybody ever has any questions or needs me to meet them on site, I'm available. Just let me know.
There's a second copy.
I have those. Would you like me to send them to your email?
That's fine. That's
So I
fine.
can do that.
Yeah.
We're gonna table that, right?
You're gonna table that. Okay, Ptac responsibilities progress.
So Nate has brought the recommended changes that were approved. And the city manager would like to get you in front of city council at their next meeting. So if either you, since you are the chair, or Pamela, vice chair, can attend to discuss those recommended changes in front of council. I believe, looking at their schedule, they're off in July. They have a workshop on August 20th, and then they have a work session / regular meeting on August 27th.
20th or 27th?
27th. So the 20th says they have a workshop, so I'm not assuming that's a work session or a regular meeting. I think they're doing something else on that date for city council, but the next known that I can see for a city council meeting and work session is on August 27th.
So,
Let me know exactly what time regular sessions. Yeah, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, work sessions at 5, regular at 7.
So we would let you know, obviously, whether if you're gonna be on work session or regular council.
okay,
Might be
so
close.
7 o'clock on the 27th.
Yes. So we were trying to get you on the next available work session or council meeting.
Okay, and what kind of changes?
So the same changes that Victoria had written up that the board approved during the May meeting. I have them all saved. I can send you the documents that were approved.
Okay, are they in the letter to Scott Marshall?
It should be yes.
The changes are in here.
Well, it's not really clear. You know, he sat down and enumerated what the changes are. I mean,
Yeah.
It's not really clear to me what changes you're making.
Well, we're not making any changes. These were the recommendations,
Or the
changes by
By
the tree.
Victoria,
So it was all of you. So you all unanimously voted to pass the recommended changes that you wanted to see changed. And then Tamara brought up that she would hope that the city would kind of work hand in hand with maybe adjusting more changes or adding some things. Kind of like how we're going through the parks and doing our assessments, adding those, because right now that's not listed as a responsibility, but adding things like that. So there's.
So we still haven't been told how much money is in the tree. According to the, and this was part of the question, well, this is one question that Ptac had, there's no urban forestry plan for the city of Beaufort, so that should be removed from our
Well,
responsibilities.
that's something too that you have to write to council and ask that to council while you're in front of them. Because whether there is or there isn't, you would get a definite answer, at least from the top there.
We're probably not gonna know what we're talking about,
They should,
you think?
if it was written in there, there should be.
This is another thing, in reading through this, we were told that we would be more involved in the Tree City USA application, and that got kind of not confusing, but, you had to get the information in, so we couldn't go there and sit and work your computers. I mean, we're not gonna do that.
Yeah, no, and that
That's-
was one of the recommended changes.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to put in there, I believe it was, we still wanted to plan Arbor Day together. But the
Sure.
paperwork and stuff would be done by either us or, if they change it in the future to some other department. But right now, it's us that submits the Tree City USA paperwork. So obviously, we would continue to do that. But you would still work along with us with planning the Arbor Day celebration, species, locations and such.
Okay. Recommendations for the use of the tree fund, and we asked about that, and we never got a response,
Yes.
any kind of response.
I understand that. That's why I'm saying, while you're in front of council, that would be a good opportunity to bring up that point, saying why you're making the recommended changes, because one, you haven't heard anything. And two, you are wondering if there is.
Right. And by now, there's a huge amount of money in that tree fund. Well, because of the last clear cutting situation. At some point, there was $80,000 in it, and the purpose of it is to use it to administer needs for planting new trees for any kind of maintenance that needs to be done in the city of Beaufort. And we basically have not made any recommendations because number one, we don't know how much is in there. Number two, it hasn't been made clear to us that we said that our recommendations would be, received well,
Yeah.
right? I mean, am I saying this wrong?
I think that the way that it's been is that through the changes in city managers, I think he was searching to see, so working along with finance, planning, seeing if there is a tree fund or designated area. I would say in your meetings with Kurt, did you ask if there was a said tree fund that comes from the clear cuttings and their development?
I didn't say it like that,
Yeah.
but Kirk said that there was a lot of money in it, because the last finance paid added $100,000 or more to it. So the question that we have is, where is the money? And can we make recommendations for its use based on the needs that we see or that others see and bring to our attention?
Because I know how, because Scott Marshall, our city manager, he did say in one of the meetings, he did say that Ptac could make recommendations for plannings, maintenance, and we could look into it and find funding. So from his understanding at that point, he would say that he could look, you could bring your projects to the table, and then we can bring it to the city manager. We find the source of funding, whether he pulls it from said tree fund that exists or money from the planning. He did say that that's how he would operate. So not saying that, he's saying it was no money, but he didn't know if there was a set tree fund. But I understand what you're saying is that you're asking in the responsibilities, it says from the tree fund. And you're asking for clarification if there's a tree fund, how much money's in the tree fund, and
You would been asking that for money.
yeah, so that's why my recommendation is if we're putting you in front of council, I think that's the perfect opportunity to be able to ask that question, is there a tree fund? Is there funding that Ptac can pull from or make recommendations from? So I think that's something that you should be working for, so that way there's language on it.
Okay,
And if there is, would that be something that we would use for upgrading parks?
right. So Adam just did a screen over off of the rail trail near the trailhead near Hermitage. And, you know, the tree fund could be used for something like that instead of pulling it from, you know, whatever.
Funds or
Yeah,
donations.
exactly. But it's that kind of thing that we could use that.
I think that's the best course of action is you'll be in front of the city council and. You have some members that have been on for a while that should know. At least point you in a direction or give you a direct answer there. Or that might be the time that if there is one, maybe one will be amended to be created. You never know, but I think opening that conversation in front of them gets that ball rolling the way you want it to.
Well, if you read through that, you know, if you have time and you do read through the description, the duties and responsibilities, you're gonna see that that's included, so. Okay. Any questions? Any confusion?
I did have a comment about, Calvin Thomas Park. So the center of it, you can't see them in the photograph, but there's some plants in the center. It looks very nice.
Thank you.
And back in the eighties, you know, that park didn't get much attention. I can tell you that. We maybe went there once. I mean, we were walking basically in somebody's yard to get to it. We were down by the river or at the bowling alley, but, and then the other park. I did,
Wilson.
yeah, I went to both of these parks within the last 2 days. So I wanted to walk it, check them out. So the Wilson Park. I did notice the water spigot in the center, and this says,
To be for Jasper testing.
what does that mean? Testing?
So
Temporary?
no, Beef and Jasper comes out, I believe, quarterly and they check the water coming out of there. So that's technically their testing tap, it's just on our water
That
supply.
water testing.
Yeah, so.
Oh, okay.
So they come through and they check, I guess, the quality of water that's coming through, but
Make sure it's up to code.
yes.
It's like that.
So they have a couple of spots, not saying all throughout city property, but I believe Wilson Park was just one of those agreements where they put one in. But throughout the city, there should be other sections that they have little testing spigots that where they come and they test the quality of the water.
And they should all be above ground.
Yes.
Okay,
That's why they get hit on.
So I did have a question,
okay,
urban forestry plan, I've heard that before. It says there is no.
There is none. So right now, up to this date, the only thing I believe that the city has ever done as far as a plan for this was a tree survey. Was what they did, and that was
years ago.
years ago.
There used to be like 3 or 4 certified arborists, maybe 4 certified arborists on the tree board. This is going back to 2010 or something like that. And we walked around the city of Beaufort, neighborhood by neighborhood, and literally did a tree survey of what kinds of trees and the, you know, the size of them and condition and such in virtually almost every neighborhood.
It was.
And that was the last time it was done, and it was quite some time ago. But my understanding is that in order to affect a new urban forestry plan, you would have to hire, the city would have to hire
Yes. So
somebody specialized in that kind of thing.
So taking a bunch of classes and courses and looking into it, especially we attended South Carolina Trees an organized conference, and we learned that the urban forestry plans really start off with a canopy assessment. So it's a GIS overview of the city of Beaufort or whatever entities, property lines and tree canopies within. So it usually starts with that, gathering that information, but then usually some next steps. It just depends on the funding and how much of a plan. So there's different stages of an urban forestry plan. You have master plans, you have, 1 to 5 year plans. It just depends on what the city wants to do, how much funding they want to put into it. But it usually starts with the canopy assessment, tree surveys, and then you move from there. You take the information gathered from that, and then accompanied with the tree ordinances that are in place, all that kind of becomes the combination of an urban forestry plan. And like I said, it's up to the entity to decide what kind of plan that they want to have, because you don't want to just go into it. Well, we're just gonna do an urban forestry plan. Well, okay, well, do we want a master plan? Do we want to map out the next 10 to 20 years? Or do we want to do a 1 to 5? What is more manageable, feasible, and financially responsible for the city? So there's a lot that goes into an urban forestry plan, but as stated, and especially in the responsibility is creating one, but it's very difficult to just say we'll create it, especially if there's no funding coming in, because everything that we would have to do would cost upwards of anywhere from 70 grand up to 150 grand. And it could be more, it's not cheap. So you would have to find funding to be able to do it. But I think that's one of the changes that they wanted to update in the responsibilities, because I believe it's in there. It states that to come up with a forestry plan. That's one of the recommended changes that Ptac wanted to make, was to, I believe, either change the wording to assist with planning or remove it entirely. But that's one of the things where you get in front of council and you kind of talk these bullet points of saying, this is why,
Right.
because it's not just one of those things where tree ordinance, you're focused solely on one thing. It's kind of just, you're looking at other tree ordinances and saying, okay, this works for us, we could do this and that, but you can't look at everybody's urban forestry plan and say that works for us, because somebody else's tree canopy won't match yours, somebody's financials won't match ours, or landscape, species, all that stuff. So there's so much more work that you cannot just skip over and just say, oh, I'm a copy and paste. No. So I think if it were me, tree ordinances should be updated. They said, every, 3 to 5 years. You should look back into them and continue to update them, continue to keep them fresh, because like you said, cities ever growing, so are, construction mandates, all this stuff. So as the city grows and our ordinance change, we'll have to keep going back and get back. And it's the same thing with urban forestry plans. You're only doing a certain amount of time, you need to go back and look. Well, did we change our tree ordinance a couple years? Do we need to amend this and change this? So
Right.
there's a lot that goes into it, and I think that needs to be brought up in front of city council and see what they say, and kind of work with planning and see where the city wants to go with it. Because I think once the city understands where they want to go with updating those responsibilities, a lot easier.
You mean where the city wants to go with
Urban forestry plan,
or the revision of the tree ordinance,
Yeah.
all that?
because most people, across the board, it's not that every place has an urban forestry plan. Most of the time, they just have a tree ordinance. Next. So it, like I said, it just depends on where you're at, what the city kind of wants and the direction they see from Beaufort. But I think that's a good opportunity to kind of find out and test the waters and see what they truly want to do. Because maybe those responsibilities were copy and paste. And really, this is a great opportunity to take a deep dive at it and say, okay, well, where do we want to go? For the next 3 to 5 years.
And the surrounding areas that around us have an urban forestry plan that you
So-
knows.
Not that I know of. I know that Port Royal updated their tree ordinance. And they worked extensively on that. I'm not sure if they have a forestry plan. But there's certain places, obviously, Greenville, yeah, Columbia, a lot of these places have a rainbow. Sure. So
Yes.
I believe if you look at Clemson Extension, they could show you examples of places around here that have urban forestry plans and tree ordinances.
If the city of Beaufort was to pursue that, they would have to decide a lot,
Of funding, yeah.
a good bit of funding for it.
They would have to
From what
reach
you're
out.
saying, I mean, it's It's very expensive.
Yeah, so they'd have to reach out, they'd have to figure out how much it's gonna cost, where they're gonna get funding from, and then obviously it would have to go through its readings of approval. Before, so you're talking on something that's gonna turn around in about a month or two. There's gonna be multiple.
What would the benefit, trying to understand this and grasp it, what would the benefit of having one? Of spending $100,000 on one, here you've got this canopy and, what would be the benefit?
So especially for us, we obviously go through hurricanes, so we're gonna lose our canopy throughout the years. So a lot of it is to have an assessment of where you are today. And sometimes they can look back and say, this is where you were 10 years ago, this is how much canopy you lost. And then also in these canopy assessments, they put in the bullet points, little purple dots of this can be a planting area, you can fit this species here, you can fit here. They give you all the data needed to say, well, if we lost, 15–20% of our canopy over the last 10 to 15 years, this is a way, this is how the city wants to gain that back. Here is our urban forestry plan to do so. We want to plant such and such amount of trees a year. We want to plant them here. We want to plant these species here, and that's why the tree ordinance comes hand in hand with it, because it will tell you which trees are viable for streetscapes, which ones are viable for right of ways and open spaces. So they work hand in hand with each other. So having a good tree ordinance also helps you in that direction of the urban forestry plan. So it does help you kind of guide you, like we have this 10 to 15 year goal. And this is how we can make our canopy get larger or maintain it. So a lot of it sometimes is, well, you have a good amount of tree canopy covering, not with the clear cutting, obviously, we'll lose a high percentage of that. But in most cases, sometimes they say you're good, but in this area, you might lose such and such canopy because of the age of the tree and the species over the next couple of years.
Mhm.
So there's so much data that goes into it that it could just help guide a city, saying, well, here's our goals for the next 10, 15 years. This is how we can get to it. But it's a combination of so many things. It's planning, it's working with your local extensions, it's working with arborists. So it's not just one piece of paper. There's so much that goes into it. The tree ordinances, the data that comes into it, working with other agencies to come up with a plan. But it also comes down to where does the city want to be? That'll tell you what kind of plan they want.
I think it would be beneficial to have, it's basically you're saying just a live document
Yes.
that is constantly updated that you can look back on. Be able to make changes, so whenever we're trying to updating parks or trees, we kind of look back on our history and see what worked, see what didn't work, or how well it worked.
Yeah.
I agree, and I think that in going, we're talking about going before city council. I think it would be very helpful if you came and explained all that to everybody. The benefit of having a plan, let's see. I think that would be very beneficial, because you hear the term and, don't know really what it encompasses. I think your explanation was very helpful to me. No, really, seriously. So, okay. Anything else? Public comment?
Business, if there's anything else that needs to be brought up.
I'm gonna go over this, get up to date on it.
I was gonna say, I think we threw a lot at you guys today.
Yeah, I want to get up to date on this so I can speak more.
Like I said, I'm here to help. So if you guys have any questions, I know Barb, she calls me all the time whenever anything pops up.
Yeah, whenever I think of it.
But that's what I'm here for. So I'm here to take your questions, answer your questions, or if I don't have the answer, I will try to get the answer from somebody who does. So feel free to contact me, call me, email me, whatever you guys need, okay?
I'm kind of in the same, there's a lot of things like what he was talking about, with the parks. Definitely have a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
But obviously, we need to know if we have the funding to do it first. So. The only thing that I can honestly say right now is if we can find out
if we have money. Or what that money is, then we can make better. I think give our ideas a little bit more, yeah, recommendations a little bit more, it's more knowledge.
So that many years ago, we did walkabouts and inspected all the parks. I think there were 32 of them, or something close to that. This is good.
38.
I've been on this board for a long time. Anyway, and we went, and we walked through all these parks, and we did make recommendations to the city to sell the property. Some of the parks that they were just not basically viable parks. It was real estate sitting there, and why not sell it and use the money for, improvement of other parks? So as we go through any kind of list, that could be a possibility too. You may turn around and think, well, why is this park here? What's the purpose of it? And that's one of the things that I thought of with the Housing Memorial Park, was that I've been here a long time, maybe longer than you, I don't know. I came in 1970, and I never, ever have seen anybody, and I live off of Hermitage, so I live kind of close to it. I've never seen anybody using that park at all. So,
Came 5 years after you.
well, needless to say, that was one of the things. Now, Wilson Park, and we can talk about this, next month too.
It's the
Wilson
water
Park,
view. Yeah.
that's a
Gotta keep-
great,
gotta keep
great
that.
access to the water. Great. Yeah, and I think you should cut that bluff some.
Well, I think.
Yeah, Tom's was,
I know you got pushback, but you know what? I don't think it's gonna affect their view.
Yeah, please. As long as I talk to them, I get on the same page. We try, especially with certain parks, and as you see with those, there's neighboring. So we try to accommodate and work with. And meet
Oh,
in the middle. So the
Tom?
views.
Oh, there's the problem.
Scouting.
I think on the side, it's kind of, you can see that picture. We can talk about it next time.
Oh, I didn't
You guys
know it
can
was
see
in the
what you
back.
guys
There it
think.
is. Oh, okay, the photo is in the back. I didn't see it in the back. The
Yeah.
flowers, I was talking, the plants, I was talking about.
No,
Oh,
we took the park over,
Which one? Calhoun?
so yeah, we took it back over about, I'd say maybe 5 years ago.
Who was maintaining it?
So I think there was an agreement, back then, we had Southern Palmetto, kind of helping us out, working on that. And then when that contract was up, we ended up taking it back, but it was a while before we got it back. But again, it was in a state where it was overgrown, there was no middle garden bed, we put in all the benches, garden, the
Oh, wow.
tables. There was a lot of dead trees in there. We had to get the arborist to come in, and there was about 13 trees we had to take down that were hazardous.
Wow.
So it really opened up that middle space to where that flower bed's probably under full sun for it's about like 10-12 hours.
When you see the picture here,
Yeah,
I mean, you can see where we're shaded and you can see where it's just boom.
and that's all day. All day until the sun goes down.
I mean, something like this, the name is Memorial Gardens, right? So adding on to what you have here and maybe making some walkways that kind of connect to the main entrance. And having some other flowers or plants along there might encourage people to want to walk through. I don't know, is there an access point for the residents on?
Yeah, so there's a parking space in the front and Yeah. so you have that circle there, and then on the outside, we put a gravel circle, so you can do a full come around, not both. But people can park there. The only thing I said in the last meeting was we do have an issue of people parking over that. So there's been talks of maybe putting in split rail fencing to deter people from parking beyond those boundaries, because the signage doesn't always stop people. So,
And the sign, maybe push back. Push that a little bit further, because if I'm not looking for it when I drive by. I have to look for the sign.
that one you'll be able to find a lot easier than Wilson Park. People at Wilson Park, if you pass Hermitage Lake and you don't look to your left for it, you're gonna miss it.
And coming from the other direction, you're coming around the curve, I mean, you can just totally miss it, totally.
If you don't know to look for the red bricks on the sidewalk, you're passing it. Then you turn around Hermitage Road anyway. So no new business? No public comment?
No, sir.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.